You're listening to the Modern Mainframe, BMC's intelligent C optimization and transformation podcast, covering the latest trends and issues in the mainframe and how BMC AMI solutions can help you make change your competitive advantage.
Hello there. Welcome to the Modern Mainframe. I'm Matt Dallaire. Today we're having a roundtable discussion about the role of artificial intelligence in mainframe transformation. And we have quite the panel assembled. Intellyx Director and Principal Analyst Jason English, and from BMC, Vice President of R&D David Jeffries, Vice President of Solution Marketing Management Priya Doty, Senior Product Development Architect Anthony DiStauro, and Principal Product Manager Liat Sokolov. Jason, Dave, Priya, Anthony, Liat, thank you for being here today.
Good to be here.
Good being here.
Hi. Hello.
Jason.
The mainframe industry is facing a major challenge with the retirement of skilled professionals. What do you see as the biggest risks for organizations trying to navigate this demographic shift, especially in terms of maintaining operational resilience?
Yeah, it's an interesting question that most companies are facing. If you lean too much on the idea of Gen AI kind of filling in for organizational expertise, I like to liken it to like a Wile E. Coyote, chasing a roadrunner off a cliff where he's kind of running and he realizes there's nothing under him at the end of that process and he starts falling. That's basically sort of what we can end up with if we don't attack this problem judiciously. So, just having a co-pilot that can look ahead and make recommendations and automate toil out of the process of maintaining and managing mainframes. It does take time out of a developer's day, so it's very appealing to almost everybody that comes into contact with it, but it really needs to be done in the context of that developer's own business and the environment that they have on site. So if too many employees are leaning on Gen AI too much for every part of their daily business, they can start to lose an understanding of what's actually happening within the environment and within the business context that they're trying to support. So it's really important for knowledge transfer to take place, that the most experienced engineers are using Gen AI from the beginning as well as the newer ones. In fact, some companies are looking at doing a staged rollout where they make sure that experienced engineers are interacting with it to make sure that it's not hallucinating, that it's not coming up with faulty solutions first, and then they start bringing in lesser experienced employees to kind of gain from the knowledge that the AI is also building at the same time. So it's just one aspect of passing on knowledge that's really important in this space.
Priya, recently you hosted the 2024 BMC Mainframe Survey webinar, and the survey reveals that 60% of extra-large organizations, which are prioritizing AI ops, are turning to generative AI solutions to tackle complexity. So what unique challenges in mainframe environments make Gen AI such a critical component?
Yeah, it's all about the people, right? People drive everything ultimately. And, if you look at the mainframe environment, I think one of the biggest challenges that we see our customers and even within ourselves, right, is the issue of skills. So underlying that 60% data point that you just shared there is the fact that if you look at the mainframe survey this year, we're already starting to see a demographic shift. And so if I look at 2019 and now we're in 2024, so the last 5 years, there's actually been a 23% drop in respondents that had 20 plus years of mainframe experience. So that means almost, a fifth of the people responding are not in that, very experienced category. And instead, we're seeing that the number of respondents with that mid-range of 6 to 10 years of experience is actually increasing. So now there's 14% more of those respondents in the survey. So if you look at, the demographics, I think there's no denying that that's happening in the mainframe world. And if you look at how companies are reacting to that and how they're trying to deal with it, they're not doing anything significantly different than others are doing, in terms of thinking about outsourcing, thinking about consultants, looking at bringing in new talent and training them up, all of those different things. We kind of know what options are available to us. But one of the toughest things in mainframe is kind of twofold, right? One is, how do you get all of the institutional knowledge that these 23% or fifth of the people are walking out the door with. How do you get that institutional knowledge codified and embedded into the software that people are using, right? That's what software is good for, always has been. And the second challenge is, how do you get people who are considering careers in tech or growing their careers in tech to want to work on mainframe, right? And that's where the tooling comes in. And Gen AI is new, it's cool, it's different, right? So it's a combination of those two things. And that's why I say people matter a lot here, because it's the combination of the people leaving, but also the combination of getting the new people excited about these tools. So I think that's probably one of the most interesting elements of the survey. And then the other aspect I will just say is, I mean, if you look at overall Gen AI as an activity, almost a half of the respondents, so 40% of the respondents are starting to look at Gen AI. They're interested in Gen AI. 3/4 of them, 77%, have a Gen AI policy in place. So it may not be exactly here and now for mainframe. And we're going to talk about what we need to do to get it to be here for mainframe, but it absolutely is coming.
Dave, what are your thoughts on how Gen AI can help transfer and retain institutional knowledge?
I think it's a very interesting prospect in terms of, let's just try and work out why people are worried about the skills drain. All right, why people are worried about losing skills that have been on the platform for a number of years. You lose those skills, you lose your ability to transform, you lose your ability to react to change, you lose your ability to kind of, we use the modernization phrase, all right? And I think people and companies want to continue to evolve, continue to transform, continue to get better, continue to build new applications and support new applications in a different way. And when they lose skills, they lose that ability to change, or they don't lose the ability to change, they increase the risk of change. And I think one of the aspects of generative AI that we should all be very interested in kind of harnessing where necessary is that almost that level of trust that people don't understand some of the applications. So where's the developer gone? Well, if I've got a tool that can help me understand that, then my next generation developers are going to be able to change those applications with more confidence. They're going to be able to change the configurations of the systems, the databases, etc., with more confidence. So I think if you wire all these things together, organizations want to change and transform. Loss of skills puts a lot of pressure on that and a lot of risk on that. If generative AI can help reduce that risk, we're going to see the platform, certainly from a mainframe perspective, open up more, be more agile, transform better, transform quicker, and then the skills of the next generation coming out of universities, etc., with the Python and the Ansible and yada yada skills are going to be just much more applicable. So by the fact that you can change and lower the risk and provide that change, you're going to make that platform just much more approachable, simple, familiar to that next generation of mainframers coming out of schools and colleges. So I think it's going to be key. Obviously, it's going to be interesting as to how we capture that subject matter expert into the tools, as Priya was talking about. That's going to be the real kind of game changer. If we capture them in a very efficient, effective, and valuable and trustworthy way, and present it in a trustworthy way at the right tool, at the right time, and the right point, etc., then I think this is going to be groundbreaking for us.
Anthony, according to the BMC Mainframe survey, respondents investing in their mainframe systems are significantly more likely to have a Gen AI policy in place. Yep. So what specific AI policies or strategies should organizations consider adopting to ensure smooth integration into their mainframe operations?
Yep. Yeah, well, I think we all know that we can have a podcast just on this topic alone when it comes to AI policies and strategies. Okay. But as we move forward, I have a list of 7 that keep kind of bubbling to the top of this topic. And I'll go through these 7 here that I think are really important for organizations to look at and consider. And you can see how they're kind of related as I go through it. But the first one at the top of the list is all about data governance. That's a real important part of this, especially if you're moving into that generative AI space. I think we all know at this point the quality of large language models in the generative AI space is all about the quality of the data that it was used for training purposes. So quality of data is number one within data governance. Two, privacy and security, of course, right? We got to be very, very careful about appropriately scrubbing data that we're using for training materials and having processes in place to scan training data, to flag and understand where there's data that needs to be scrubbed from the data. And the other thing that pops up in this space is actually the source of the data. Where's this data coming from, right? Understanding, is it something that's completely yours on-prem type of proprietary data within the organization, or is there potential for external data being consumed into the training material? So you have to identify that. And when we get into that space about sources of data that you're going to be using for training, and then of course the ethical considerations, right? They start to pop up here. You know, we have to start looking at addressing bias and fairness and that transparency of the data. You really need to understand where it's being sourced from. And I think that's one of the areas, if you're using open source models as part of your generative AI solutions, you need to have that transparency to understand where that open source model received its corpus of training material from, right? That's something that's critically important. And it's not just about the LLMs neither. It's also about our machine learning models that we create too. So you got to consider that. And then, you know, in our mainframe space, we have lots of customers in the area of finance and healthcare and insurance. And there are just tremendous amount of, you know, compliance and regulatory policies in those areas. And we got to make sure that our AI systems that we're creating adhere to all of that, right? We've got to make sure that the systems that we're building and the AI models that we're creating and using to formulate responses out, they're all in compliance with the industry. And when we talk about compliance, you got to make sure that everything that you're doing through the path of generative AI, especially, is something that's auditable, you know, that you can audit, right? You can track it, you can understand it. Who's triggering what prompts or inferencing against the LLM? It's all got to be trackable, and then you also need continuous monitoring on top of all of that to make sure that you're in compliance. So that's a whole area within itself that's really, really important. But then we start moving into skills, right? The skills within the AI space. You're only going to get out of AI, generative AI, as good as your staff skills are in understanding the traps, the pitfalls, and the concerns in the AI space when it comes to really understanding and utilizing the technology correctly. Got to make sure the right skills are in place that understand these previous concerns that I mentioned. You just can't be moving resources into the AI space and starting to use all these models and data and training and stuff without them understanding what's the legality behind it and the science behind it to get the most out of it. One of the things that has come up is scalability, understanding that when you move generative AI into your corporate environment, what does that mean for your existing cost concerns, right? You know, it's going to drive up costs. You got to understand cost concerns. You got to understand what the extra load that these systems are going to be bringing to the table. You got to understand that perspective. You need optics into all of that. And the other thing too is part of a strategy I talk to many folks about is you really got to take a step back and see, is AI ML or is AI, generative AI, something that you really need to apply to a particular problem, right? It seems like right now everybody just wants to apply generative AI to every problem they have. And that should be part of your strategy, is have a committee or a group that evaluates where you want to apply this technology and see if it really makes sense. Because, you know, a lot of times the standard old rules-based approach to solving a problem is good enough. It's like my top 7 that I talk to lots of teams and lots of folks about when it comes to that particular topic.
Great. Jason, how are you seeing organizations develop their AI policies?
Well, I mean, really, it all starts with establishing a policy that allows for continued learning while judiciously understanding like what kind of data goes into the process itself, right? So obviously we need to guard against things like proprietary data making their way into a generally applicable AI model, but beyond that, we really want to show how over time you can establish a policy for like what parts of the development process is it valid for, right? We don't want to replace where the actual knowledge of a business expertise would come in to apply a solution as opposed to doing something by yourself. And then also there's a big aspect of intellectual property. Like companies really need to think about what they're putting into their own software, and then how will Gen AI help create that software, and who owns the actual resulting code from that process. So companies are really starting to wrestle with this right now, like in terms of what's proprietary to my customers as far as the data that they're using on our systems, and what's proprietary to my company as a provider of that software. And so there's going to be a lot of give and take on the legal side of things as well, just trying to figure out how do we understand what that means. We find the companies that are doing the best job of it actually do set forth a policy for when it is good for developers to use the system, when is it good for support engineers to use AI, and they kind of clearly articulate how that policy is set forth. And that's really a matter of employee education. It's not just a matter of usage, but if you want to monitor the usage of Gen AI, that's part of that process. You need some sort of feedback loop in order to make sure that the policies are being obeyed.
Liat, automation has always been a goal in IT. Gen AI promises to take it to a new level. What are some real-world use cases where Gen AI can successfully reduce the time spent on repetitive tasks in mainframe management?
So there are several use cases I can think of. A great example is in DevOps. AI assistants are now helping developers navigate and understand legacy mainframe code much more efficiently. Instead of manually going through lines of code, these tools can automatically annotate code snippets, generate test cases, and even create corresponding data sets. This is a huge time saver, especially in the QA process. Think of it as a real-time coding companion, offering suggestions based on the organization's best practices and design patterns. Then there's AI Ops, where generative AI is simplifying operations for system programmers and automation engineers. A really practical use case is its ability to explain complex Rex rules, for example, or identify the root causes of incidents in real time. Based on historical data, it can also recommend the best remediation path and even automate certain responses. This drastically cuts down the troubleshooting time and minimizes the need for manual intervention. Security operation is another area that's benefiting. Security engineers can now use AI to make natural language queries and quickly understand security correlations or potential breach patterns. This kind of real-time insights really speeds up identifying and responding to security threats, which is critical. DataOps is also seeing a lot of value. For example, junior DB2 users can now use chat-based AI tools to get explanations and guidance, essentially leveraging the knowledge of experienced DBAs without needing to constantly ask for help. It's a huge boost for onboarding and shortening the learning curve dramatically. And finally, in mainframe to cloud management, generative AI is being used to analyze data to make decisions about offloading workloads based on usage patterns. It can also recommend changes to compliance policies, optimizing both performance and cost. This saves enormous amount of time that would have been spent manually crunching the numbers and making those decisions. So all in all, what we're seeing is that generative AI isn't just about automating repetitive tasks. It's augmenting human capabilities, allowing IT professionals to focus on the more strategic, complex aspects of mainframe management. And we think it's a real game changer.
How is Gen AI helping IT managers achieve better visibility and control across mainframe systems?
So that's a great question. Mainframe systems are absolutely central to many organizations, but they've always been a bit harder to monitor and manage, especially when you compare them to cloud environments where visibility is more straightforward. This is where generative AI really steps in. With technologies like our BMC Amy Assistant, IT managers can now access real-time monitoring and performance insight that were previously difficult to achieve. So instead of having to dig through complex data or rely on manual processes, they can simply ask Amy, Assistant, for details, like why performance might have dropped compared to last week, and not only get explanation, but also recommendation for how to fix it. So it's not just about visibility, it's about getting actionable insights right when you need them. On top of that, automation is key innovation here. AB Assistant can automatically detect issues, suggest solutions, and even implement fixes in some cases. Plus, it handles routine tasks, things like generating reports or providing summaries of system health. So IT managers don't have to spend time on those manual activities. This automation streamlines the operation and lets IT teams focus on higher level work. And what's really exciting is the cloud-native approach we've taken. It brings cloud concepts under one view, a single pane of glass, making it much easier to manage mainframe, similar to cloud environments. This makes visibility and control a lot simpler for IT managers, no matter the platform. Another major benefit is how generative AI helps to bridge the knowledge gaps between mainframe and cloud teams. It can translate complex mainframe terminology into something more familiar to cloud specialists, and vice versa. So we see that this cross-translation facilitates better collaboration across teams that may not always speak the same technical language. So to sum it up, these generative AI innovations are giving IT managers better visibility, control, and efficiency in managing their mainframe systems. Not only does it improve system performance, but it also supports modernization efforts by making the mainframe an integrated part of the broader IT ecosystem.
Great. Anthony, Liat mentioned BMC Amy Assistant. Can you go into that a little bit more about what it is and how it's being developed?
Sure, absolutely. So BMC Amy Assistant is our generative AI name for basically the generative AI infusion that we want to do across our BMC portfolio, right? And when we talk about Amy Assistant and what it means, we're looking at the different ways that we could apply generative AI within our solutions. So as we all know, that there are three prominent styles to which we see generative AI being applied today, right? So we see the classic, chat interface. We'll call that a classic experience now because it's well over a year old. But we also see copilots, right? Copilots has become an extremely popular way to bring generative AI to your solutions, enhance existing product experiences. And then we also see things like automation or, I guess like an autopilot type experience where generative AI is triggered based on different criteria to run and do things related to generative AI. Now, one of the things that we've learned over this past, 18 months or so that we've been really deep into generative AI is that there is not a one size fits all when it comes to generative AI solutions, especially for us. We have 5 different product areas and different products and solutions within those areas. And having, what I'm going to call an AI agent responsible for all things across our product areas is just not a good approach. And I think we all have been seeing a lot lately about AI agents and our move towards agentic AI. And this is a really valid shift that's happening. And what it's teaching us here is that we need to create highly specialized AI agents for areas of responsibility to which we're applying generative AI. So for us, look at our DevX space. We have a highly specialized AI agent, ultra focused in just that responsibility of dealing with the DevX space. And we'll do that across our entire portfolio, across DevOps, across Amy Cloud, Amy Data, etc. So that's the first thing that we've learned is that we want to bring LLMs into the generative AI space that are optimized and tuned for the specific roles they want to play. So that's what we're doing in our backbone to support our generative AI initiative as we move forward. But that's only part of it, right? That's going to relate to our BMC product data within our product areas with the AI agents, and even our own internal assets like our product documentation, our how-to articles and knowledge-based type material. That's all the BMC corpus that those AI agents work with. But most importantly, it's what we mentioned earlier, bringing in that tribal knowledge from our customer's organization to augment what we're delivering with our AI agent approach and augment that with our BMC knowledge also. And it's that complete infusion of all of that is the backbone of what we're doing with the AI agents. And that's our approach moving forward with generative AI. And everything that we build from here on out is all going to be related to that aspect.
It's great. There's a question that I'd like to get responses from around the table here. Dave mentioned earlier trust being an issue. So how can AI help developers, system programmers, et cetera, feel more confident when dealing with unfamiliar code, with a lot of AI apps information that's coming in that's quite complex?
Yes.
How can they trust it, and how can it help them feel confident in the answers it's given?
Yeah, so I'm going to give you a great example that's related directly to me in this whole area about trust and understanding code, legacy code, etc. So way back in the day, when I first came into the industry as a distributed developer, sorry about that, Dave, I literally took my first job, and when I got hired, I went my first day to work, and the owner of the company, we were a small startup, and he literally handed me a CD and said, well, here's all the source code that we have for this product that we want you to work on. And by the way, we have to show this at a CMG conference in 2 months. Patted me on the head and sent me on the way with the CD. I was the only distributed developer for that company at the time. So you talk about fear. Here I am, fresh out of school. Someone hands me a CD with thousands and thousands of lines of code that I have no understanding what it is, what its purpose really is. There's nobody for me to lean on. There's no expertise. That was fear. I was literally frozen with fear. First, am I going to be even capable of understanding this code base, being so new in this industry? And second, never mind the fear of then trying to make changes. If I would have had generative AI as my companion at that point, that would have been phenomenal because it breaks it down to many different aspects. The first thing I would have used generative AI is for actual, code comprehension, explanation, starting to break it down, etc. And as you move forward and you start to understand the code base, and you relate it back to what the generative AI is giving you back for information and guidance and refactoring and optimizing the code or fixing bugs, that's when you start to establish the trust with the system, the generative AI system. But most importantly, when the generative AI systems get to a point for a developer where it can do like a real-time bug detection, as I'm writing the code, flagging things I'm doing in real time that are potentially problems and things I should avoid. It's all these types of guidance and help along the way that generative AI could have provided me back at that time would have grown my confidence in myself. And then when my confidence in myself grows, then my confidence in my generative AI system that's supporting me would grow. It's like we're almost growing together when it comes to trust on both sides. And I see that happening in a lot of areas, even outside the DevX space. Trust is a big, big deal. And we got to manage that accordingly with our solutions and our customers as we go forward. Now, one of the biggest areas I wish I would have had just not too long ago when I worked on teams doing code reviews, I would do day in and day out, thousands and thousands and thousands of lines of code I would have to review. And what would happen is it's such a cognitive load that is being put on myself at the time that I was starting to second guess myself that I'm missing things because I'm getting fatigued from all the code review I'm doing. A great example here of generative AI with help and trust is having generative AI do like a level 1 type of code analysis, right? So when someone pushes a change, have the AI step in and just do an intrinsic sweep of the code that's being committed for that level 1 code commit to, based on best practices, based on known industry patterns, etc. Generative AI could help a lot in that space with that level 1. If there's any issue, kick it back to the engineer, let them make a change, resubmit it back in. So that the time it gets to me, the human, I know a certain level of review has been done. And then when it gets to me, actually, again, it's bringing more trust in myself. It's reducing my cognitive load and fatigue. I trust my AI system on that level 1 check, and I can take it for that level 2 final commit. And again, there's a symbiotic relationship that you start to establish with the generative AI when it comes to things like that. Never mind to mention what I talked about in the Share conference, all about documenting the code base. It's beyond just documenting modules. It's beyond just documenting functions. We need to take a step back and look cohesively across your code base and get that documented end to end for building that trust within the system. And you'd be surprised, there's quite a few that are not at that point within their enterprise and their source code management to have it organized and structured in such a way where they could do that type of code documentation. A lot of times what I've heard is our code, the comments in the code are actually out of sync with the code itself, right? So that's become a big problem. They're like, well, how can generative AI help with that? How can generative AI sweep in and update all the comments to match what the actual code is because they're out of sync? And again, you're going to do that as you move forward your generative AI journey, establish that trust with generative AI to go off and do that.
Anthony, I want to know what a distributed developer is, by the way. It's like a piece of but let me just give you a perspective, and this is something that's come up in a number of customer conversations that we've had. As you talk about trust and as you talk about starting to, because it's trust. You let it do more the more you trust it. But the concept of, one of the value props that I think that our Amy Assistant kind of incorporates is bring your own LLMs, right? Bring the ones you trust, bring the ones you know. But one of the customer conversations we had recently was this concept of let me rate the LLMs. Give me the ability to kind of use multiple LLMs, and then I'll rate the scoring, as to which gives me the best answer. And then you think, well, hang on a minute, that's just so similar to what we do day in, day out when we do something in our normal walk of life, and it could be do something in the garden, in the house, the yard, wherever. You don't know how to do something, you probably go to YouTube, you go to social media, whatever, and you watch somebody or you listen to somebody and you look at the ratings. Okay, how accurate was this? How useful was this, etc. And I think probably a similar concept like that is going to materialize here. People are going to there are a multitude of LLMs out there. People will probably start to craft, obviously, their own LLMs. There'll be smaller LLMs, very specific LLMs, etc. So I think that kind of rating system may be something that comes in at some point in time. But I think the large language model that you choose and you rate or whatever to be the best for you is only one aspect. It's the quality of the information that's fed in, and as Anthony has mentioned before, your own tribal knowledge. It may not be just, well, this is generically how you fix a problem, or what something does, or how to interpret something, or how to change it. It may be a case of, well, this is how we do it inside our bank or our insurance company, etc. So it really is how good can we get at harnessing and capturing the local tribal knowledge, the knowledge of the SME who's been in that role for the last 30 years or whatever, and ensuring that is infused into the products and infused into at the right point in that advice or automation or creation of new code, etc. So I think it's a multitude of things. Rating systems, I think, may come in at some point in time, but quality of infused tribal knowledge, I think, is probably number one. That beats and trumps probably everything.
Dave, I just want to add something to that with the tribal knowledge. I also see a lot just across the industry looking at the tribal knowledge as a one-way street, right? It's all about push into the generative AI system. But if you take a step back and talking to customers, it's becoming more of a document management system on top of the generative AI, right? They want to be able to, of course, infuse, but they also want to be able to manage what was already pushed into the generative AI system. They want to be able to pull out old information that's not relevant anymore. They want to be able to identify that, have like a manifest of what was infused in the generative AI system, easily retrieve those out, update those, or delete those. Then also potentially having an automated system based on, persona or role, whatever you want to call it, where it's not just a one-time, one and done, they may want to have this as an automated process to which when new information becomes available or updated, it's automatically ingested into the system and whatever document maintenance needs to happen, et cetera, so that they have confidence, again, going back to the trust, that the generative AI system is always up to date with whatever's going on within their enterprise.
Yeah, I just want to circle back and add to the trust part that we mentioned here. One of the capabilities that we are going to deliver is to have a purpose-built LLM per functionality. So imagine that you can bring an LLM that is specialized for the AI ops or for the DevOps or SecOps, data ops. This is also something that we see as, accelerating the trust and the confidence of our customer with generative AI solutions.
Yeah, and I'm just going to add something to that. That goes back to related to the AI agents I was mentioning about in our specific product areas. Customers can go into each product area and tell that AI agent which LLM should be used for a particular purpose. So we're gonna get that granular within the solutions as we go forward. That's tremendously powerful for them. And it goes back to as we evolve forward and we get to more specialized LLMs for specific tasks, and they get smaller in footprint and manageability, that's going to become even more important with that whole AI agent approach.
And maybe the other thing to mention here is the concept of just the trust associated with something being on-prem or in the cloud, right? Because all of our customers that are talking about doing this type of thing in a mainframe context, most of them do not want to do that in a cloud-based environment. So you got to also think about first principles. We're a mainframe team here, and people put data in mainframes and keep them on mainframes for a reason. And in many ways, I think we need to continue with that paradigm of making them available on-prem first, whether that's private cloud or owned data center.
Yes, and I think that's probably the first step in trust, that our customers know that they could take our generative AI solutions and install them safely within their on-prem infrastructure, and they don't have to worry about that public SaaS cloud presence, et cetera. I think that's a first good step for trust, is that, hey, this solution's available to you. You deploy it and configure it for what's right in your environment, your security needs, your AI policies. We're adaptive to your needs. That's a great point, Priya.
Yeah, with that, our customer will gain control over the data and LLM, and that's a big advantage.
What should people expect from the first version of BMC AMI Assistant, and what will it enable users to do, and why does it matter?
So in October, we're releasing AMI Assistant, and it'll be part of our Code Insights experience. And that is with the Eclipse Workbench as well as the Visual Studio Code IDEs. We'll have AMI Assistant infused in the experience as a co-pilot, where it's our release of our Code Explain for COBOL code. So it'll be embedded right into the IDE experience. The developers could get Code Explain at a function level within the COBOL code. They can highlight code as much as they want and do an explain against that. We can inject that back into the code base as a comment, or use it for documentation purposes, etc. So AMI Assistant is going to have that infusion of that knowledge in the DevX space when it comes to that experience, and then that's in October.
Great, Jason. Looking ahead, how do you see Gen AI evolving to meet the growing demands of mainframe systems?
I really think the focus is really around just trying to make sure that the company has a way to maintain and modernize itself going forward. So when people ask me all the time, like, my kid's just getting out of computer science school, what do you think they should do? I mean, I'm not lying. I always just say you should learn mainframe. I mean, you should really get into this. That's your best next move, really, in my opinion, because if you can learn to do mainframe today, and when you get involved, you'll be using AI. Generative AI tools, you'll be using modern languages, you'll be doing cloud native infrastructure, you'll be doing all the things that you would expect of a modern application suite, and you have job security. So like, what more can you ask for than that sort of approach? people want to use the latest tools. They want to feel like they're actually making a difference where they work. I think this is it's essential for companies that are relying on the mainframe to make sure that their recruitment departments and their engineering leaders are informing the public about, like, this is what we're looking for in new talent. And just to make sure that you leave that door open, that they understand, hey, we're going to be using the latest tools, the latest Gen AI capabilities, and we're working on modern architectures to bring us forward. I think that's just the number one message I would say to most companies looking at this technology.
So, Jason, I'm going to add something to that that's quite ironic to what you said. My oldest son is going to be graduating soon with a cybersecurity degree. And he's like, well, where should I go with this from here? And I said exactly what you said. I'm like, you go right to the mainframe space. I said, cybersecurity in the mainframe space. It's a great career choice for you to be moving towards. So,
I've spoken with a few professors, too, who are encouraging their students to do the same, that there are good openings, there are good jobs, excellent opportunities to advance.
Yes.
So it's a good spot for graduating students to go. As always, this has been a great conversation. Thank you, Jason, Dave, Priya, Anthony, Liat, for taking the time to be here today.
Thank you.
Yep, pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
I'll include some links in the show notes to more information about AI and Gen AI on the mainframe, as well as information about the new BMC Amy Assistant. So be sure to check those out. Thank you to everyone listening. We'll talk to you next time on the Modern Mainframe. Take care.
You're listening to the Modern Mainframe, BMC's intelligent C optimization and transformation podcast, covering the latest trends and issues in the mainframe and how BMC Amy solutions can help you make change your competitive advantage.